In the middle of World War II, a German submarine designated U-1206 was hiding in the North Sea, trying to evade British aircraft patrolling above. The captain needed to use the toilet, but when he flushed, he opened the wrong valve. Instantly, high-pressure seawater blasted backward into the vessel, flooding directly into the submarine's battery compartment. The salt water reacted with the battery acid to create a lethal cloud of chlorine gas. Choking on the toxic fumes, the crew had no choice but to bring the submarine to the surface, right into the crosshairs of the British forces waiting above, who quickly destroyed the vessel. Down 200 meters in the crushing dark of the ocean, a single turned valve can become a death sentence. Down here, there is absolutely zero margin for physical or mental error. While early submarines could only stay submerged for days, modern crews routinely spend months locked inside these steel tubes. In recent deployments, vessels like the HMS Vengeance have remained fully submerged for up to 201 days straight. If flushing a toilet can destroy a military vessel in seconds, how do 130 people eat, sleep, and breathe for 7 straight months without accidentally killing themselves? This diagram compares living constraints to give a sense of scale. A standard prison cell gives an inmate about 80 square feet of space. A modern submariner gets a quarter of that. They live out their deployments confined to an average of just 20 square feet of personal space. The environment is a tight maze of metal corridors where shoulders constantly brush against one another. The Navy aggressively screens recruits for any signs of claustrophobia, because panic at this depth causes rapid, irrational decision-making that endangers the entire crew. Even sleep requires intense logistical planning. Submarines carry more crew members than they have beds. To solve this, they use a system called hot bunking. They stack these racks so tightly you can barely sit up in them, and sailors rotate through the exact same mattress in shifts. The bed never actually gets cold. Hundreds of meters below the surface, the sun never rises. Normal biological rhythms collapse entirely, forcing the crew to rely on an artificially engineered, constantly rotating schedule just to keep their minds sharp and their bodies functioning. Feeding 130 adults for over half a year requires around 20,000 kilograms of food. Yet, because every inch of a submarine is devoted to machinery and weapons, there is no massive walk-in pantry to hold it all. Instead, the crew builds a temporary floor out of their own rations. Large metal food cans are laid out directly in the corridors and under the bunks, and the sailors literally walk on top of their future meals until those supplies are gradually eaten away. Inside this tiny galley, the menu includes steak nights and ice cream machines. High-quality food is the primary tool used to disrupt the sensory monotony that leads to deep-sea depression. Living in a high-stress, physically demanding environment forces the body to burn calories much faster than normal. To prevent exhaustion, the Navy adds a 4th daily meal known as midrats or midnight rations, specifically designed to keep the night shift crew energized and alert. Every meal is a calculated intervention. It fuels the physical demands of operating heavy machinery while serving as the primary psychological anchor keeping the crew from cracking under the isolation. Breathing is a massive logistical hurdle. You have 130 people locked inside a sealed tube, each consuming hundreds of liters of air daily. Bringing along massive tanks of pressurized oxygen is highly risky, primarily because pure oxygen is an extremely flammable and explosive gas. This graphic demonstrates the solution, a process called electrolysis. The submarine draws in salty seawater and uses electricity to split the water molecules, isolating the oxygen. This onboard system manufactures roughly 78,000 liters of fresh, breathable air every single day. But oxygen is only half the equation. Every time a sailor breathes out, they are exhaling carbon dioxide. If that gas builds up inside the hull and reaches a 10% concentration, the air turns highly toxic. To prevent this, the air is constantly pumped through chemical scrubbers. Using a liquid solvent called amine, or solid compounds like soda lime, these systems actively absorb the carbon dioxide out of the air, converting the toxic gas into a safe, solid waste product. Every single breath the crew takes is a delicate, intensely engineered chemical balancing act. If the oxygen generator breaks or the scrubbers fail, the crew will rapidly suffocate in their own exhaust. Despite operating entirely submerged in the ocean, a submarine is constantly starved for fresh water. They rely on high-tech filters using reverse osmosis to pull the salt out of the seawater. Because generation is slow, water usage is strictly regulated, limiting sailors to roughly 60-second showers. But getting water out of the sub is vastly more dangerous than getting it in. Managing biological waste brings us right back to the fatal mistake that doomed the U-126. Look at the pressure dynamics on this cross-section. When a submarine is hundreds of meters deep, the weight of the ocean above is constantly trying to crush its way inside. Disposing of waste requires specialized pumps that can generate enough outward force to temporarily overpower that immense external pressure. Operating this involves a highly specific sequence of valves. If a crew member makes a mistake and opens the outer valve before sealing the inner one, the crushing weight of the ocean will instantly blast backward into the ship's interior. At these depths, even the basic disposal of waste is a high-stakes struggle against the physical weight of the North Sea. The machinery on board is meticulously designed to sustain life. Filters clean the air, osmosis provides water, and pumps fight the ocean. But engineering cannot filter out the psychological toll of strict isolation, visual monotony, and endless artificial light. Locking a human mind inside a steel container for 6 straight months with no sunlight and zero contact with the outside world breeds intense anxiety. Depression and claustrophobia are constant threats, lurking just below the surface of the crew's discipline. And a strained mind makes fatal miscalculations. In 1944, the crew of the USS Tang fired a torpedo. But due to a small technical error during the launch, the weapon circled completely around and struck their own vessel, sinking it. The disasters of the Tang and the U-1206 highlight a constant. Even the most advanced hardware cannot compensate for the exhaustion of the crew. Surviving 200 days underwater requires more than engineering. It demands that 130 people successfully navigate a 7-month endurance test against the ocean, their own machines, and the limits of their own concentration.